And my name is Jargowsky, and I'm with Mississippi Alabama Sea Grant. And today I'm going to show you a couple different ways to fillet Gulf of Mexico red snapper. Two different ways to kind of cut the actual fillets out, and then for one of these fish we'll actually descale and cook whole. But in terms of making your initial cut, there's two real different methods you can do. The one cut involves cutting all the way through the fish and then kind of going across, and then there's some rib meat inside here that we'll have to cut out later, whereas you can also kind of just cut around that rib meat, and that way it kind of saves you a step. But I'll show you both methods. First method I will show is just cutting kind of through that meat. We have a fillet knife here, and we also have a serrated knife. For this part, you don't necessarily need a serrated knife, but I like using a serrated knife to make that first cut, as it will make sure your fillet knife stays nice and sharp. And so you can kind of feel where the meat is, and so what we want to do with that first cut is kind of feel where that meat is, and then kind of just start cutting down. And again, in this case, in this first fish, we'll actually get some of that rib meat and we'll cut it out later. And you want to kind of cut until you hit kind of like that backbone area, so about halfway through the fish. And you'll feel when the knife starts giving you some resistance. But now we made our initial cuts, we can actually start doing the filleting. A lot of people are kind of hesitant to fillet a fish, but it's actually not that difficult. What we'll start here is we kind of make an outline of our fish. So we'll make our first small initial cuts around the bottom of the fish right here. And we're not really trying to go too deep here. We're just kind of trying to get right above, again, that backbone. And we're just slowly going across, again, just to kind of cut away some of that skin so we can get right into that fillet. And we'll go right to the base of the tail. Now that we've made that initial cut, we'll kind of slowly work our way to the backbone of the fish. And what's important is you want to make sure you stay flat with the fish. If you get your knife at too high of an angle, like this, on the fish, you can see here, you can imagine this is all the missed area for the meat. So what I like to do is I almost put a little pressure. So you can also like flex that knife a little bit. They're meant to flex a little bit, and that way you can almost put a little pressure down on that fish, and that way you can make sure you're getting all that meat, because you don't want to waste any of it. So again, we're going to kind of keep going until we reach that backbone. And as you kind of cut across, you'll kind of keep lifting that fillet up. So we'll cut, and right now we're about at that backbone. So you can see here, there's actually a little bit of red, and that's because there's a bloodline that runs right along the backbone of that fish. And the reason why I say I want to kind of go to that backbone is because if you simply go over top of it, you risk losing some meat, because it's almost like a little bump in the road, so you want to make sure you get right up on that bump and then kind of stay right on top of it, because you don't want to lose the meat that's kind of on the other side of the hill. So there's kind of two different ways you can kind of keep going this side. Some people actually, once they get to that backbone, what they'll do is they'll actually flip the fish around, and now do the same thing we did on the bottom, but work on the top. Again, we're going to kind of outline that fish here, just kind of working the way down the top of that fish until we get all the way to the base of the tail. Again, once we made that initial cut, we won't really have to worry too much about getting the knife cut through. Because sometimes that's the hard thing, is just getting that knife through those scales. But since we use that serrated knife in the beginning, we're fine. We don't have to worry about that. And now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to kind of go right along that backbone and peel as we go across. We're staying really true to that backbone of that fish, because again, we're getting all that meat possible. And we're going to go right until that backbone. And now we're actually about halfway on that fish. As you can see here, that backbone's right here. So all we got to do is just cut a little bit above that backbone, and our fillet will come right off here. Sometimes the fillet will get stuck kind of right in this little area, and that's just because there's some pin bones. So we can just kind of cut through that with a serrated knife, and that'll pop right out. So when we filleted our fish, what we did here is we actually cut above this rib area. And so there's lots of bones in here, so this meat isn't good, but there is still some meat on top of that. So we just kind of cut right above it. You can also cut this meat area out, and then when you do that, just kind of cut it out later. So we would just kind of go through here and cut that out, or you could just go over top of it. And now, since we didn't descale this fish, we want to take the skin off. There's two different methods you can do here. But essentially what we're going to do is almost kind of like what we did with the fish, but we're going to remove the fillet from the actual skin. And so you can either cut this fillet off and basically separate it from the fish, or you can leave it on, and that's kind of what I like to do, and I'll show you here. I'll flip this around, and actually we'll make a cut right above here, and we'll actually stick our finger in here. And that's why I like the skin attached to the fish, is it gives me something to actually hold on to. And now we'll just kind of work our way across. Again, kind of like with the fillet and the fish regular, it's important that we stay close to that, stay flat here, because we don't want to lose any of that meat. And we'll kind of just work our way across while pulling. And there we go. Here's a nice looking red snapper fillet. Sometimes you can have a little bit of pin bones in here. And since I cut pretty close to that belly, I can actually feel those. So what I'm going to do right here is I'll just kind of feel where those bones are, and I'll just kind of cut them out. It's almost like a little V-shaped notch. Just like that. And just like that, we have no bones left in this fish. You can see here there's a red line down the fish, or the blood line. You can cut this out if you want as well. It kind of depends on what size fillets you want to work with. Some people like the taste of the blood line, some people don't, so that's kind of personal preference. So if we just cut in a V, we can make sure to remove that blood line while also not losing any of our nice white meat. So I moved this half, and now I will move the other half. Again, just cutting in a nice V. And you see here, here's our bloodline. And then we have our nice white fleshed red snapper fillets. Get those on ice. Again, we don't want them sitting out too long. So now we'll do the other side. And it's just literally repeating of the first. So again, don't want to go all the way through, but just kind of cutting through the scales, and that way our fillet knife stays sharp. Now we'll kind of, again, outline our fish. And again, we kind of go across and we pull. And as we pull up, and that's really just separating from that fish. Cut some of those bones out so we can free that fillet a little bit. Okay. So now we'll go to the other side and do the same thing. Sometimes it can be a little bit more difficult on the second fillet because, as you can see, we don't have that meat holding this fish up. But it's not that difficult. You just got to be careful not to go way through. So we'll go right along that fin here. Again, working our way all the way to the base of that tail. Just kind of slowly work our way across the fish here. We'll go over top of that belly meat, and that way we don't get any of that bone. Now we have our fillet to the base of the tail. This time I'll remove the whole fillet, make a cut along the base, hold this skin down, and it's just as easy before going across. I almost like to flex the knife a little bit, and you want to go across the skin. But again, we'll move that bloodline real quick. So we'll first cut this rib cage meat off. So we'll just feel where that rib cage is and just cut across like this. And now we'll remove that bloodline. And we can see it runs right here. And we'll cut almost straight down, but a little bit out. Here it says one of our fillets. You can actually see the red meat here. So again, we're gonna kind of just cut it in a V-shaped. Here's our nice red snapper fillet. So unlike with the last fish where we kind of just cut straight down, this time we'll actually go around the rib meat. And this way is kind of a little bit easier way to fillet it. It loses a tiny bit of meat in the process, but it makes the filleting process a little bit easier. But you can almost kind of feel where that rib meat starts, and you can almost push up on it. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna cut along the outside here, then we're gonna go across a little bit, and then we're gonna cut down right here. Red snapper have a spine right here. We'll cut basically right at the base of that spine. That's kind of our idea of where to cut down. But again, we'll cut where this nice meaty area is up here. Cut down, again, just kind of cutting through those scales. And then again, we know that the rib meat starts right here. So now we'll cut across to avoid that rib meat. And then start cutting down. Again, the spine of the red snapper is right here. So we're gonna basically cut right to that spine. You can see here, this is rib meat here. But now all this is just flesh. So just like before, cut across, almost outlining our fillet. We'll go right to the base of the tail. And now we'll work our way up until we get to about that backbone. And then we'll go to the other side. You can also keep working from the same side. You don't have to flip sides. So in this case, I'll stay on this one side. You just gotta be careful when you go around the backbone here, because when you go around the backbone, you can lose some of your meat. But again, in this case, we'll just stay on that one side of the fish and keep going across until we get to that edge on that fillet. So now we're pretty much at the end. Right here is just where the skin is. And if you come from the bottom side, you can cut through that skin pretty easily just by going across. Again, there's our fillet. And you know you did a good job with your fillet if you look at it and you don't really see much meat left here. And that's what you kind of look for. And some people they're afraid to fillet a fish, but really it just takes a little practice. And really once you do one or two, it'll become secondhand. And it's a pretty easy process. So again, we'll remove the skin here, grab the base of the skin, and just work my way across here. We have a nice clean fillet. And again, we'll move this bloodline real quick, cutting in a V. We have our nice red snapper fillet. So with this fish, we're actually gonna cook it whole. And so if you actually caught this fish fresh, what we wanna do is actually remove those guts. And to do that, you can see here, there's actually there's a hole right here, right in front of this spine, as I mentioned, kind of our area to shoot for when filleting. You can simply just put your knife in here, cut across. It'll kind of go up through those fins, pretty much till your knife stops pulling. And then you can just go in there and you can pull those guts out. When you do that, just make sure you stay shallow. Because we're removing stuff like the stomach, we don't really want to be rupturing some of those internal organs. So if you just stay nice and flat, you can actually go in there, and then in this case, we'll just remove some of that leftover guts. Well, if you are cooking the fish whole, what you want to do is you want to remove the scales. Now, remove the scales, you can do that a couple different ways. If you have a nice descaling tool, it almost looks like a rake, you can go across here and actually pull the scales off. But you don't even need one of those. Just simply, all you gotta do is use the blunt side of a knife. You don't want to use the sharp side because you don't want to dull it. But you can kind of just like work your way across. And you can see these scales are just kind of slowly starting to pull off. And we'll just do that along all the fish. And you can see here, you can kind of know where you got the scales and what you didn't, because if you feel right here, it's very soft. So you're gonna just kind of keep doing that until you have all those scales removed. One thing I will mention is that when you are doing this, just be aware of the fish's spines. It kind of makes a bit of a mess, so definitely want to do this outside or in a sink. And want to get everywhere where there is potential meat. And you can feel if there's still scales or not, because as you run your knife back across, you'll actually hear them kick up. So we want to get right up along that fin there. Got most of it. I'll kind of spin this around and just do it this side, just so I can make sure I missed a little bit of scales right here at the base. So just make sure you get all of the scales off this. Yeah, and our fish is descaled. And so a lot of times when we're cooking, actually now, we have our area in here, and we'll actually stuff the fish. So when people actually stuff the fish with, say, crab meat or maybe a half a lemon, what they'll do is they'll stick it in here. And that's why it's important that we remove all of those guts right now. Before we can actually cook this fish, there's two final steps we want to do. One thing we're going to do is we actually want to make serrations along both sides of the fish, and that's kind of why actually we can put some like seasoning and some lemon juice and stuff, or however you want to cook this fish, on the fish, and that way we can make sure that seasoning gets inside the meat. We also want to remove the gills. To remove the gills, you just have to remove the operculum, which just covers them, as you can see here. And there's a couple different methods you can do for this. The one thing you can actually do is you can take snips, or you can use a knife, and I'll use a knife in this case. And you can actually see here is that the gills attach right at the base of that mouth. So if we're looking over top here, it's this area right here, and that's what we want to cut. And so with this, sometimes it's better if you have a slightly smaller knife, but it'll work. And basically we're just going to cut straight down here. And you see here, we cut that off, and now we can just literally just pull those gills off here. So we kind of just take that and pull that right out. See here, here's the gills from the fish. And again, once if you get that bottom, you can just pull the top off. And before we actually cook this, we'll just rinse some of this stuff off so we can get some of that blood out. But our last step, again, we'll make 4 serrations on both sides. And again, we want to do this because when we put seasoning on the fish, we want to make sure that gets into the meat. And I'll do that on the other side as well. You don't have to go super deep, but again, we want to make sure our seasonings are making their way into that meat. All right. And so with that, we have our perfectly ready to grill whole red snapper.